Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Transmissions from the Outpost here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. This is a series that we post every once in a while when we review various movies or pieces of media. Feel free to check out the playlist on the channel if you want to see reviews for a lot of different things. But I wanted to sort of give a stream of consciousness review of a new film that I've been looking forward to, The Long Walk, directed by Francis Lawrence, who is the guy, I guess, behind the Hunger Games movies, which I don't think I've ever seen. Maybe I've seen one of them, but I'm kind of unfamiliar with this guy's filmography. Anyway, just a little bit of background of why I was so highly anticipating The Long Walk, because I think it will sort of inform the listeners out there as to why my review is probably very, very critical when um, the film itself is getting great reviews. Let me just check again. This is stream of consciousness, so I'm just kind of looking at stuff as I go here. It's got an 80. As I look at this on September 21st, 2025, 89% critic rating, 85% audience rating. So this is a film that's generally liked by most people that watch it, but I did not like this movie at all. And the more I think about it, the more I really, really despise this film. And the reason why is because this story, which was released under Richard Bachman, as of course Stephen King wrote the story. I believe this was the first novel he ever wrote. He wrote it when he was like 17 or 18 years old, something like that, back in like the late 60s, the height of the Vietnam War. And it wasn't released until many, many years later under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. And then once, of course, the pseudonym was found out, somebody found out it was actually Stephen King, then they've all been released under his name. But when I was a kid, my mom gave me the Bachman books to read, and The Long Walk has always been my favorite story like ever. Like I just love this book. I've loved it since I was a little kid. I love it now as an adult. I actually reread the book before I went and saw the movie. So I saw the film on a Tuesday. I think I started reading. You can blow through this book in like 2 days if you want. It's only like 160, 170 pages long, something like that. But the reason why this book is so personal to me is because when I was a kid, I said, "This is the movie. If I ever become a famous movie director, this is the movie I'm going to make." And it is so personal to me that at I had to have been 13, 14 years old. I wrote an entire screenplay for this movie. I've had this movie in my head since I was a child. Exactly how I would shoot it, exactly how I would make it, the types of actors that I would cast in it. And so there's been, rumors over many, many, many years that this movie was going to get made. I think Frank Darabont was attached to it at one point, the director of the Shawshank Redemption. Would have been great to see his take on this. Um, However, when I saw that this was actually coming out, I avoided everything. Didn't really watch trailers at all. Didn't read anything about it. I knew it was out. I think I linked a trailer to my friend Jeremy. You can check us out on Exhuming the X Files because he's a big Stephen King fan as well. I linked the trailer for him to watch some time back, but I kind of avoided it because I didn't want to go in sort of knowing really anything about how they may or may not change it. And so, what I love about the original novel is it is such a well, first I'll say, like, the ending is perfect. I have felt that the ending of the original novel by Stephen King is literally perfect, and there's no way to improve on that. One of my big major criticisms of this film is that they completely changed the ending of the book. Like they change perfection. Why? Do I need to really get into it? I don't think I need to, but maybe we will as this, again, stream of consciousness review rolls on. But I love the characters. I love that the characters are kids. that they're like 15, 16-year-old kids, and they are sort of not forced. They sort of volunteer to go on this long walk, and essentially the story is, in the novel, there's 100 kids, not 50, like the movie shows, and it's kind of like a dystopian alternative timeline of the United States of America. There's a couple very quick sort of like teases as to what may or may not have happened. There's a reference to when Hitler attacked the East Coast of the United States. But the thing about the original novel is you don't know anything about how this government came about, why this sort of long walk is occurring. You just get these little brief little morsels, and it allows your mind to sort of just fill in what this world is, which I really really love. This is a story that I don't want everything handed to me and told everything that's going on, because it's a story, it should be a story about the kids and the relationships they create from all of these strangers, on this long walk. And the film, one of my other critiques of the film is that it explains pretty much everything. Mark Hamill, who's great in the role as the major, he shows up and he explains pretty much, oh, well, we're making all you kids walk because, the economy is horrible and we want people to work harder. And they see you and they're actually videotaping everything live, so that, America can watch all of these kids on the long walk and everything like that. And I hated that. I absolutely hated that. I In the book, the major is barely in it at all. He's just kind of like this looming presence in the background. The focus is on the kids, and multiple points throughout this movie, it's like, oh, we have Mark Hamill. We're going to have to put him in a few scenes here. And you'll get the major. He shows up and he gives little speeches here and there to the kids to keep walking. And that's just not really the focus of the book, nor should it be the focus of the movie. Um, and yet it is. So yeah, some of the things. Okay, sorry, I'm bringing up my Google Keep note here because I wrote down a lot of stuff here that really bothered me in this adaptation. Number one, this is actually going to be a strange thing, and you might be thinking I'm very prudish in this, but way too much cussing in this movie. Like from the very beginning, these kids are just so foul mouthed, and I understand. Like obviously, when you're in a very high stress situation, people cuss. I don't mind that. There's some cussing here and there in the book, but the book, there's very little of that at all. It's mostly the kids having actual conversations with each other that matter. They are creating the friendships, because they're all strangers when they show up to this sort of long walk. They just meet each other for the very first time right before the thing starts, and then they establish and create their relationships as they go along, and with the knowledge that, like, you're making a friend with somebody and they're most likely going to get shot in the head at some point along the way. And how do you deal with the ramifications of somebody who you consider to be a friend now, you watching them get shot and killed right in front of you? And how can you continue to walk under that kind of trauma and pain and suffering and emotional outpouring? um, that is, but the sheer amount of cussing that all these actors are doing, at least in the first portion of the movie, strangely enough, I guess it's a weird minor thing. It probably won't bother a lot of people, but it bothered me. It really bothered me. I mentioned changing the ending. I'll go into the ending a little bit in spoilers, by the way. Again, it's just kids walking. Someone's going to have to survive to the very end to win the great prize. Riches beyond your wildest imagination, and a wish is granted. Whatever wish you want is granted. In the ending of this, there's two characters, right? You're following Ray Garrity and Peter McVries. Those are the two sort of main characters in the novel as well. Although there are far more characters in the novel, which we'll get to a different sort of criticism I have of this. But ultimately, what happens in the novel is that Ray Garrity makes it to the end, and essentially, why I think this ending is perfect is because by the end of this thing, everyone is so exhausted, right? They're so traumatized, they are so exhausted. At the very end of that thing, Ray does not stop and say, "Here's what I want for my wish," and here's what I want. Give me my money. He doesn't celebrate. He sees sort of like this dark figure that he can't tell who it is, what it is, and he just starts running. Which and that's kind of how it ends. That's literally how the original book ends. And as you read it, it's just perfect. And Stephen King has a lot of troubles ending stories. That's been the big critique of Stephen King, I think, even from his own fans, is he can have these amazing setups, and then the endings just, he doesn't stick the landing a lot of times. But I've always felt that the ending of The Long Walk in the book is perfect how it is. And Peter, in the movie, spoiler alert, Peter is the one that survives at the end. Ray kind of sacrifices himself so that Peter can be the one that makes it. And then you have a whole confrontation with the major, and all that, and it just feels completely. I mean, it's like if something is perfect, there's nothing beyond perfection. You cannot create something better than what the ending was of the book. And so, regardless, even if they had Ray survive in the movie, and then it turns out because he's got this whole backstory in the book, he has no idea why he's walking. He doesn't. He mentions the fact that his dad was taken by the squads here and there, but you don't get some like in the movie. They have this whole thing where he's like, "I'm gonna get revenge. I'm gonna win this thing so that I can kill the major and get revenge on my dad because the major was the one that killed his dad and stuff like all of that. None of that is in the book, and it gets to my sort of disappointment of this movie just holding your hand for literally everything. Everybody's got a reason why they are walking. Everybody's got a sort of like a little backstory as to why they're doing their thing. And at least for the main character in the novel, he doesn't know. And I've always felt that is so sort of unique and interesting that he doesn't know why he's actually doing it, which gets me to another critique, and I might bounce around here. Again, I apologize, stream of consciousness there. In the novel, he's walking. There's a town called Freeport, and he is walking primarily once he doesn't know the reason necessarily the reason why he started walking, but once he's walking, he's trying to at least get to this town of Freeport to see his girlfriend Jan and his mom. So in the movie, they kind of focus on the mom character. I think Judy Greer plays the mom, and she plays it really, really well. She does the emotional thing very well in this movie. But the main sort of thing is his girlfriend. And there is a great moment in the book where after when they get to this town, unlike the movie, and here's another major critique of this movie. In the book, they mention it starts out the major does not let anybody watch The Long Walk when it starts because the kids have to kind of focus on what they're doing. And the major thinks that if a huge, ton of people are lining the road, you lose your sort of focus, and it makes it harder. But at a certain point, people are allowed to come and start watching. They start walking into towns, and it's like a humongous national event. Like people are, this is sort of like patriotism to the nth degree, right? Like there's actually a sequence in the book where there's these girls, and like their whole thing is like they just want to have sex with somebody who's walking, right? And so they basically get this guy to sort of like he's going to use one of his warnings, because the whole thing is you get 3 warnings. In the book, you had to walk 4 miles per hour. In the movie, it's 3. And I think I read that Stephen King said, "Hey, but make it less because there's no way someone could survive walking 4 miles per hour for that long." Um, and then you get 3 warnings, right? So if you stop for any reason, you get a warning. In the book, I think it's like 30 seconds. In the movie, they make it 10. You get 3 warnings, and then what they call punching your ticket, which is one of the soldiers just shoots you dead. So that's the sort of thing. But you get all these moments in the book of why a lot of these kids are stopping. Like one of the guy walkers decide he sees one of these girls who are kind of like, "Come on over, screw me," and he has to run over and he does it, but he can't kind of like finish. And when he gets back to the road, he's freaking out because the stress he couldn't do it, and then boom, he gets shot and killed because he starts, completely unfocused. You don't you lose all of that kind of stuff. And I understand, like when you read a novel, there's a certain amount of stuff that will be lost in translation for a film adaptation, right? So you can't necessarily think or see the inner workings of the monologues that the various characters are saying, and you have to cut some stuff out. But you don't get that stuff with throngs of people on the road. Like there's a sequence in the book it's just disturbing when you think about it. But in the book, like they have to shit, right? When you're eventually walking, you have to crap. But again, you're going to get warnings, so you have to pick and choose like what you're going to do. And Ray, he's trying to avoid it as long as he can. But there's a whole sort of thing about when you have to go to the bathroom, but you don't want to, and you sort of leave it in there longer, and your guts start like really screwing up, and the embarrassment and the shame with hundreds if not thousands of people lining this road cheering these people on, and having to crap in front of somebody like that, like all of these people, and then the kids going and like scooping it up and trying to sell it because they got a crap from a long walker. It's like all of that stuff that makes the original novel so disturbing on a lot of levels is gone from this movie. And I don't know if it was just a budget issue where they couldn't have tons and tons of extras lining this road. You see some people towards the very end, but like the whole sequence. Getting back to Jan, he one of the things I loved about the book is he's focused on Jan and his mom and reaching them. And when he actually gets there, because Ray's very very concerned. Well, there's going to be so many people. How will I even see them? I have to keep walking. I'm going to miss them. And there's a whole sort of internal sort of struggle there. But when he finally gets there and he sees Jan, his girlfriend, and his mom, he kind of goes up to them, and the same thing happens kind of like in the movie where Peter has to kind of like pull him away from his mom and his girlfriend, and they're telling him to go. They do that in the movie, but there's no people around, and they cut Jan completely out of the movie. They only focus on the mom, and in my head, that scene is so much more powerful because when he walks away, the main character has like a crisis because he's like, "Oh my god, I went up to my girlfriend, and in that brief amount of time, I didn't even really pay attention to my mom." And he has a whole thing about how his mom must feel, where she wanted to see him, and he spent whatever brief time he had with his girlfriend and not the mom. And it's little details like that when you cut all of this stuff from the book, you miss those little details that make this story so powerful and so sort of internalized and realistic as to what and Stephen King has always been that way, right? He's always been able to write very realistic characters, especially kid characters. That's just something that's I think that's why so many people have connected with Stephen King books over the years, is the way he builds the characters and the relationships and how they all come together. So he cuts all of the people on the side of the road that watch this thing, which I felt was a huge hindrance to this film. If you, for example, and I was talking to Jeremy a little bit about this after exhuming the X Files, I was like, if you wanted to take this story and place it in a modern context, right? Let's just say like this was a thing that was going on today. Absolutely, there would be thousands of people who would be standing along the side of the road watching this, cheering it on, celebrating when people are getting shot and killed. That's just how it would be. And so by not sort of, or at least half the country, shall we say, um, so not taking the opportunity to really show that and how disturbing it is for so many people who would be celebrating and cheering on this kind of thing to excise that opportunity for social commentary in your movie. uh it's crazy. It's crazy to me why they did that, and why those decisions were made. So big thing. That was a huge problem for me. Not enough time to invest in the characters. The characters in the book are fantastic. Like all of them are absolutely fantastic. And because you have, I think this movie's like an hour and 45 minutes long or something like that. Um, you have a lot of time to. Well, what I will say is what works with this film is the kind of like the relationship between Ray and Peter. That's the main focus of the movie, and they do a great job. The two actors that portray those characters, excellent. They have great chemistry. I don't think some of the other characters, the chemistry was that great, but they weren't focused on. Um, and a lot of the times of what they did is to sort of chop down the amount of characters in this. Is they conflated characters, and there's two characters they conflated that I feel really hurt the film adaptation. Those are the characters of Stebbins and Scram. So Stebbins is kind of like in the novel, I suppose he's kind of like your antagonist character. He is the character who everybody looks at him like there's no way he can be beat. He doesn't get tired. He doesn't get warnings. He's kind of an asshole sometimes. He's not like Barkovich, who is a total asshole. The actor who played him in this, I felt was a little over the top in the way he was portraying him. Though, to be fair, in the book, he is very sort of like he screams and yells, and he does the whole thing where he gets people riled up, they get shot and killed, and they call him the murderer. There is a lot of stuff I will say as a positive for this movie. They took a lot of the same dialogue from the book, and a lot of the moments they took directly from the book. So this isn't like an adaptation that they go completely wild and different. I would say a large majority of the film adaptation takes stuff directly from the book. The problem is that all of the context that made those moments work are gone. And one big example is Stebbins and Scram. So Stebbins is the guy who's like, no one thinks he's going to be able to be beat. Scram is kind of like he's the character that we find out was married in the book, and he has a conversation with Ray and Peter, like why he's doing it. And he's got a child on the way and stuff. All that's gone. They just sort of a line of dialogue after I think Hank is the one in the film that gets killed, and someone's like, "Oh, by the way, he had a wife and kid." But you don't get to sort of hear it, right? In the book, the character of Scram is he's talking about how much he loves his wife, and he can't wait for his newborn kid to arrive. And then the other characters like, how could you do this? How could you do this? And so all of that stuff is gone from this movie. But Scram in the book is the one that starts to get sick, because he says he never gets sick, and I think the Vegas had him as the odds-on favorite, and the whole thing is he starts getting sick. Well, as soon as you know that a character is getting sick, they're going to die. They're not going to make it to the end. And here's where the problem is with the film adaptation. They take what happens to Scram in the book and they apply it to Stebbins, who is, the major's bastard son, whatever. So as soon as he started getting sick, I knew he wasn't going to make it to the end. But Stebbins and Ray are the ones that make it to the end in the book. And so you take a character who everybody's scared of on this long walk because nobody thinks they can beat him, because he essentially shows no weakness, right? There's just everyone else is slowly fading, and this guy, they look at him and they're just like, how can he be beat? And when they're having conversations with him and stuff, it's like, there's no way we're going to beat this guy. I'm not going to beat him. And they ruin that in this movie. They absolutely ruin it, because as soon as he starts coughing, you're like, oh God, where, who's the guy that Ray's going to be, thinking he can't beat? There is nobody anymore, right? They kind of try to make that Peter and Ray walking around, and so they conflate a lot of characters, and that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I mentioned explaining the world. There's way too much in the major and everything that's sort of going on. But here's another thing: a lack of showing pain on the main characters. Now, I'm gonna give a little bit of grace to the movie here, because in the book it goes into great description as to what is happening to the bodies of these walkers, the muscles that are twitching, and the pain in their backs, and all of that stuff. It goes into excruciating detail, and to the point where, like, you feel it. I'm just sitting on the bus reading this book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels like my feet are. I can, like, feel the description in my feet. You don't get that in this movie in the way that I wanted it to be shown. Yeah, you get people talking about, oh gosh, I'm so tired, and I'm getting a Charlie horse, and stuff like that. Like, there's one scene early on with, like, a very young kid. They do a token young kid at the very beginning of this movie that gets shot, because he kind of lies about his age to get into the long walk, and you can tell he's really really young, and he does the whole Charlie horse thing, and gets shot, right? But here's the problem. In the book, he lasts quite a while. You get to know this kid. In the movie, you don't. You don't get to really know him at all. It's just kind of like, well, he's just young, right? I'm supposed to feel bad for him because he's a 15-year-old or a 13-year-old or 14-year-old. He got a Charlie horse, and then he gets shot in the face and killed. But it's so much more impactful when I know a little bit more about this character, and that's gone. It's all sort of excised. But getting back to the bodies breaking down, you just don't get that. Ray and Peter are pretty much never tired in this movie, unless they say they're tired. Like, oh yeah, I'm tired. Of course you're tired. Yeah, it sucks. But there's no, like, them breaking down in terms of how painful this walk actually is, and the amount of actual sort of focus and endurance that they have to go through in order to keep walking. So it felt like the actual physical deterioration of these kids was it was more lip service paid to it than actually seeing how hard it is for these individuals to actually walk. Few other things. Like I said, this movie's been in my head since I was a kid, and so there's a lot of disappointment that I have with this. So we're 28 minutes in. Holy cow! But I'm not done with my rant. Um, Incline of the hill. There's a sequence early on where it's kind of like in the dark, and all these kids are getting shot. It's supposed to be impactful. You see, like, the incline of the hill. It takes place at night in the film. You see a sign that says steep incline, and then Ray is really trying. I think he's got 3 warnings at that point. He's trying to make sure that he can get up this hill. Then Peter eventually helps him get up the hill, and all these kids are getting shot down left and right next to him. And it should be very, very impactful, but it's not, because number one, all these other extraneous characters are getting shot down, so that we don't have to have a whole bunch of walkers going on when the sun comes up. But number two, in the book, right, they see this incline coming. And there is a lot of, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Right? I think it takes place during the day. I can't remember. All I know is they can see the hill coming, and you have a lot of sort of discussion of as to, like, how can we possibly do this? We're going to die. So many of us are going to die here. This Ray just kind of wakes up from his walking sort of doze, and then it's like they just show a quick shot of steep incline on the sign, and then boom, suddenly they're in the dark and they're just walking. Everyone's getting shot left and right. Super disappointed in that. I want to see the terror on these kids' faces as they see this steep incline, and I want to see slowly these kids go up there and start getting picked off left and right, and leave me in that world of terror. Don't make it like a 1 minute long sequence of Peter just grabbing Ray and forcing him up the hill as all these people get gunned down. It was so short, and that's such like a big moment in the book in terms of this incline in the hill. Other thing is weather. In the book, the weather is a huge component here. We get rain every once in a while. Like they say, hey, rain's coming. And they just kind of like, yeah, it sucks to walk in the rain. No, when you're reading the description in the book, it really sucks to walk in the rain. The heat is oppressive. Again, they pay lip service to it. They mention how hot it is. At one point, one of the characters in the book has to take off their shirt and everything because they are just so hot and soaked from the weather, or whatever. But then Ray's like, they're gonna die because at night it's gonna get cold, and in the sort of stress of in the heat and everything, they just toss their shirt, their clothes aside, and yeah, that person ends up dying because they can't handle the cold at night. You don't get that in this movie. You just don't. Um, and also, this is a big one for me. They explain in this film that, or they strongly hint to it, that none of these kids ultimately had a choice to be on this. Like, it is the authoritarian regime who kind of rigs this thing, and that there's always going to be kids that do this sort of long walk. There's like, everybody is kind of maybe against their will, or it's just kind of rigged so that they have to be able to do it. And in the book, everyone can back out, right? And they mention that in the book, in the movie, that you can back out, but then there's all the conversation. I think Peter is discussing this as he's walking. He's like, but can we really back out? Have we ever actually seen anyone back out, or anyone who said, no, I'm not going to participate in this? And it's so much more powerful to me, in my opinion, that it is these kids volunteering to do this. And there's something a lot more sort of disturbing to me about an authoritarian regime that allows the kids to back out than just, oh, we're rigging it and these kids are being forced to do this. They might think they're doing it of their own free will, but we're actually forcing them to do it. It's such a it's so much more interesting to me that you can have an authoritarian regime that is, not like literally everything they do is like the most evil, heinous thing possible, and that's just this caricature of evil. Where it's like, to me, like the more insidious evil is the evil of the people who like, oh yeah, I'll do good things here and there. We'll be nice, yeah, we're an authoritarian regime, we're probably doing all these horrible things that the book doesn't describe or talk about, but we're not so bad, right? We're not going to force these kids to do this, but there's always going to be enough that are willing to do it and willing to take that chance. In the book, it's 100, right? You can find 100 kids that would be willing to try this out probably today if something like this were done. There would be that amount of people for all the riches in the world, and a wish granted, you're going to get it. So the authoritarian regime doesn't need to force these kids to walk and rig the system to do it, because the society they have created has caused so much suffering and pain that these kids are willing to do this. And to me, that's far more interesting than inserting your obligatory standard. Mark Hamill's rigging this all. We think we could just do this, or we volunteered for it, but really we were just forced into it. That whole thing defeated the entire point of Stephen King's sort of comment, at least from my perspective. I could be reading it wrong, but just ruined what Stephen King was basically kind of saying about authoritarianism, and whatnot. And I sing the praises of a show called Andor, And I will continue to. There is a great scene in Andor. It's when they're on Aldani, I think, and it's the Imperials talking about. There used to be this indigenous group of people that would always make this trek up to see the great eye opening, whatnot, and that the Imperials said, no, only around 100 of them actually make the trek anymore. And it wasn't because the Empire forced them to not go. It's because the Empire gave them enough distractions that over time they just became conditioned. They didn't need to. Oh, we'll just put a Starbucks here, and then they stop, and then like, I don't really want to walk the rest of the way. Or we give them this, makes them happy over here, but really what we're doing is destroying their entire culture, and we don't have to actually physically destroy their culture like with our guns. We could just set the world in such a way that they'll destroy themselves by what we do here, and that's all lost in this. So ultimately, I mean, that's a lot of complaints. I probably have a lot more if I sat there and discussed it. But as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this story. It's my favorite story ever, and I felt like this film just ruined almost everything I loved about the book. I would absolutely tell you, if you're unfamiliar with the novel, watch the movie first, then go read the novel. Because if you read the novel first and watch the movie, you're going to be super disappointed by a lot of the decisions that Francis Lawrence makes and the writers of this. At least for me. So yeah, the book is still great. Still love it. If I had to give The Long Walk a letter grade, as is the tradition on transmissions from the Outpost, man, I mean, it's gonna seem overly harsh. Let me be the first to say, I don't think an average person just watching this that does not have the attachment to the story that I do, I think an average person is going to like it. I think that's reflected in the Rotten Tomatoes scores. But again, this is a very personal thing for me. And to me, this is an F. I think they destroyed the core of what made me love the novel so much. They just absolutely destroyed that core spirit that the book has. And yeah, it's sad, man. I mean, it's just another thing in 2025 that has just been ruined. 2025 sucks. And I did like one change that they did make in this movie. Um, Speaks to that a little bit. The character of Peter, um, he's kind of in the film. He's not this way in the book, but in the film, he's kind of like this. He's got this altruistic uh, sort of goal, right? If he wins, he's going to use his wish and his money to make the world a better place, right? This gets to my point of the people who, um, in the novel, they're cheering this. They think this is good. They think this is healthy for society. Um, but they do make note in this that, like, look, the world sucks for a particular reason here, right? You can vote a certain way, and great, good on you. But is the world actually any better, or is it worse? Are the people getting sort of oppressed? And were you a part of the people who are doing the oppression? You just didn't realize that's what you were doing. And this film actually makes that point. Kind of hits you over the head with it in terms of the character, but I liked that it was at least trying to show something that Stephen King's story in the 60s, talking about Vietnam, right? And the people who are rah about that kind of stuff. Kind of how it, how it, I like the character trying, like, look, I'm going to get my wish and my money if it's actually true that this authoritarian regime will do it. I'm going to do it to spread good and fix the problems that are occurring. So I like that kind of message in the movie. Even though that wasn't really the message that was in the book, I did appreciate that they tried to show that not everybody on planet Earth is just an awful, horrible person. There are some people who are like, you know what, I don't care. I'm just going to do something good for other people. And I like that in this movie. But all in all, I'm going to give it an F because it ruined so much of what I loved about that story. It's still my favorite story. Still is. That story is my favorite book to this day. So there you go, folks. If you stuck it out 42-ish minutes, I appreciate that. Again, just a stream of consciousness kind of review / rant of The Long Walk, but I want to make sure it gets out there because I'm on the computer right now and I figure I might as well put it up on the site. So leave a comment down below. What did you guys think of The Long Walk? Had you read the story before? What did you think of just seeing the movie if you hadn't? Do any of my points make sense to you or did they not? Let me know down below. And yeah, we'll catch you later.